When people hear that someone is worth $100 billion, they imagine that person has $100 billion sitting in a bank account. That's not how wealth works. Take someone like Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk, or Mark Zuckerberg. Most of their wealth isn't cash, it's ownership, shares of the companies they built. Imagine you started a business years ago. The company grows. Investors buy shares. And eventually your ownership becomes worth billions of dollars. On paper, you're incredibly wealthy. But unless you sell those shares, you don't actually have billions of dollars in cash. Think of it like owning a house. If your home is worth $2 million, it doesn't mean you have $2 million sitting in your checking account. Your wealth exists inside the property. The same thing happens with stocks. A billionaire's wealth is mostly locked inside the value of their shares. And that creates a fascinating problem. How do you buy a yacht, a private jet, or a $100 million mansion without selling your stock? The answer is surprisingly simple. You borrow against it. And that's where the real story begins. So why don't billionaires just sell their stock? Because selling often means paying capital gains taxes. Instead, they use their stock as collateral for a loan. Imagine you own $20 billion in company stock but need $100 million in cash. Rather than selling shares, you go to a bank. The bank sees your stock as valuable collateral and lends you the money. You keep all your shares. You still benefit if the stock price rises. And because it's a loan, not income, borrowing itself generally doesn't trigger income tax. Banks are willing to do this because the loan is backed by assets worth far more than the amount borrowed. As long as the stock holds enough value, everyone benefits. This allows billionaires to access huge amounts of cash without selling their investments and without immediately paying taxes on their gains. But this leads to an even bigger question. If they don't sell their stock, when do they actually pay taxes? That's where one of the most famous wealth strategies comes in. Borrow, buy, die. Here's where things get even more interesting. Many wealthy individuals follow a strategy often called borrow, buy, die. First, they build wealth by owning assets like stocks. Instead of selling those assets, they borrow against them whenever they need cash. This allows them to keep their investments while avoiding an immediate capital gains tax from selling. Over time, if those investments continue to grow faster than the cost of the loan, their wealth can keep increasing. Eventually, when they pass away, their assets are transferred to their heirs according to estate and tax laws. Under current U.S. tax rules, many inherited assets receive what's called a step-up in basis, which can reduce capital gains taxes on appreciation that occurred during the original owner's lifetime if the heirs later sell. This is one reason the phrase borrow, buy, die has become so well known in discussions about wealth and taxes. Supporters argue that it rewards long-term investment. Critics argue that it allows some of the wealthiest people to reduce taxes in ways that aren't available to most Americans. Either way, it's one of the most powerful and controversial financial strategies in the world. This isn't just a theory. Some of America's richest people have borrowed against their stock at different times instead of selling it. Take Elon Musk, for example. Over the years, he has used Tesla shares as collateral for loans. The same idea has been used by other wealthy founders and executives who own large amounts of stock in the companies they built. Why would they do that? because selling millions of dollars worth of stock can trigger a large capital gains tax bill. It can also send a signal to investors that the founder is losing confidence in the company. Borrowing solves both problems. They receive cash while keeping ownership of their shares. If the stock continues to rise in value, their wealth can keep growing even while they have an outstanding loan. But this strategy isn't risk-free. If the stock price falls sharply, the lender may ask for additional collateral or require the borrower to repay part of the loan. That's why this approach is generally reserved for people with enormous wealth, valuable assets, and access to sophisticated financial advice. For most people, it's not a strategy to copy. It's a strategy to understand. The biggest lesson isn't that you should borrow against your investments. It's that wealthy people spend years building assets before they ever think about borrowing against them. They understand that assets like businesses, stocks, and real estate can grow in value over time. As those assets grow, they create more financial opportunities. For most Americans, the smartest path is much simpler. Invest consistently. Think long-term. Avoid unnecessary debt. And focus on owning assets instead of only earning a paycheck. You don't need billions of dollars to benefit from this mindset. The earlier you start building assets, the more choices you'll have in the future. Because in the end, real wealth isn't measured by how much cash you have today. It's measured by what you own and how those assets work for you. So, why do billionaires borrow instead of selling their stocks? Because borrowing allows them to access cash while keeping ownership of their investments. It's a strategy that can delay taxes, preserve long-term wealth, and provide financial flexibility. But it's also a strategy with risks, and one that's generally available only to people with substantial assets. The biggest lesson isn't to copy billionaires. It's to understand how wealth is built. The more valuable assets you own, the more financial opportunities you create. Start investing early. Think long-term. And let your money work for you instead of always working for money. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.